So there is already one demo online for the engraving project, but I shot that with the camera looking straight down. So I thought for you guys, I would try to shoot it so that the camera is looking across the plate. This is your tool, and if I put it there, can you see how it sort of looks a little broken? It's got a big bend in it, right? The first time I saw one, I thought that I had broken it when I took it out of the container because the shaft wasn't straight. So I tried to hide it. But in fact, you want it to be like that. You need that to be there. Take this off for a second. You need that bend to be there so that your hand can be in the right position for the tool. So in fact, it's going to sit almost completely parallel to the plate, which means now the handle is on this upward tilt. So I can get my palm behind it to be able to push it and also kind of wrap my fingers around it. Does that make some sense? The material that you would normally use would be copper. Copper, of course, is much more expensive, but you could use it. We're using plexiglass for two reasons. It's cheaper, but also I can put my design guide right underneath it as a drawing or as a photograph to work from. So the way the tool works is it's very, very thin, very, very sharp. What I want to do, I'm going to turn this way and work on this side. To start this line, I'm going to actually raise the tool a little bit, push it just slightly to just engage the tip. But now look how much I'm lowering that. I'm almost totally parallel to the work surface. There's a little bit of space under there. I could slide this piece of cardboard sort of underneath me, but not much, right? So you want to keep it really low to the plane that you're working on. And then you can guide it with your finger and just gently push away from yourself. I don't know if you guys can see on the screen. Do you see that little curlicue thing coming out? That would be the burr if we were using a dry point needle. So because that's now gone, that's going to make that line very even, very uniform. It will look more like what a pen does on smooth paper. I can turn the tool, leaving the plate in one position by just turning my hand. So you see how I can make that curve start to happen. If you're having trouble with it though, you could leave your hand in one position and you can turn the plate itself. Can you guys see that? I haven't really moved my tool hand. I'm moving the plate itself, or trying to. There we go. So you can actually do curves. Where it's going to be problematic for you, where you're going to run into trouble, there's two classic things. Too much force and too high of an angle. If you stab it in here, right, and you're up at an angle like this, and you're trying to push it in a straight line this way, it's not going anywhere, but I can feel the metal starting to kind of bend and buckle, and the more I fight with it, the more I'm starting to get pain in my elbow joint. And eventually your hand will start to shake. I don't know if you can see that on the video, I'm exaggerating it, but eventually you're going to get kind of tired, your hand will kind of lower automatically, and then it'll just skip forward. So the trick of it is easy does it. Engage, lower, gentle pressure. That's all it takes. I'm really not digging into the plate. I'm very gently pushing. So the trick ultimately is to not force the tool. Don't go in at a super high angle. Don't use a massive ton of force. Low, engage, glide. Almost like an ice skate on frozen pond. You'll know that you're doing it wrong if it isn't moving, and you'll start to feel pain in the elbow joint and your hand will probably start to shake. So as long as you are keeping it low, 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 you can help guide yourself with your opposite hand if that makes you more comfortable. You can choke up on it and guide with the hand that's doing the pushing, or you can leave the whole thing in position and turn the plate into the tool as you go. You can do a mixture of all of those things, right? It is going to be easier, I think, if you do a little bit of practicing with it first. So when you're done with the dry point, you can flip the dry point plate over and practice on the back of that. The trick of this technique, though, when it prints, it's going to look very different to you up close from your dry point. The dry point line is going to be kind of feathery, more like how a pencil looks on rough paper. It's going to have skips. It'll change thickness. This kind of line, an engraving line, is going to be very, very uniform. Same thickness all the way across. It's going to look more like what a pen would do on very smooth paper. When I run my finger across here, the lines that I made today, I can just barely feel those with my fingertip. But if I flip my hand over and use my fingernail, I can feel it going down into the grooves as I stroke across there with my back of my fingernail. So those lines will work. They will hold ink and they will print, but they're not going to be as dimensional as the dry point lines that you're used to. Everybody feel me on that? Okay, so the tools to use are called burins, B-U-R-I-N. The engraving tool is called a burin. I have been collecting up corks to put on the end of them because they are sharp. You do not want to throw this in your bag, forget it's there, and then reach in, dig something out, and stab yourself. So you can mock me all you want for having a bunch of wine corks lying around, but they will save you from getting hurt. Okay. So I would suggest for everybody today to take the engraving tool home with you. There are several different sizes of them in here. The only ones that I think are harder to use on plexiglass are the larger ones. Can you see the size difference in the shaft there? If they're side by side, you can tell this guy's really thick, right, compared to that one. Go for the thinner ones. They work much more easily, more effectively. So again, linear design style, hatching, cross-hatching, very similar to what you did design-wise for the dry point. Any questions about engraving? Ideally, we get our idea figured out, composition figured out, even start the engraving work today. If we can have most of the engraving itself physically done over the weekend before we meet again next week, we can spend next class printing the engravings. So ideally, I know we only are meeting 2 times per project. Normally, you would meet 6 times per project over the course of 2 weeks. So you do have some work to do at home. That being said, today, first priority of business, if you haven't already, edition those dry points, right? So to do that, I would recommend taking a look over at the whiteboard. I have some tips written there